Hey everybody, it's Dana and welcome back to the channel. Today we're playing with the new Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Kit for September 2023. Guys, get ready for fall because this is the kit. The classic kit has the fall messages clear stamp, a 3 coloring layering stencil, coordinating frame window dies. You're also getting 4 core ink cubes in spicy mustard, caramel, cherry and espresso, as well as 8 clear card panels, as well as a unicorn lacquer pen. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, to keep my cardstock in place, I am going to bring in a grit mat and place that down onto my glass mat. I also have a piece of the Hero Arts Dove White cardstock, and we're going to go ahead and start off by blending our inks. Now, anytime you have the color layering stencils, you're going to see that there's an A, B, and C if there's 3 layers, and they're always written right at the bottom of the stencil. I like to always come in with layer A in most of the times that I'm doing my stenciling. I will go ahead and tape that down onto my grit mat, and this is just going to help everything stay in place. Now the ink blending is really simple with this. I'm going to start in with my spicy mustard first, and I'm going to go ahead and put down a generous layer of this. Now if I sound a little bit off in this video, it's because I'm dealing with massive migraines lately, but it is very early and I'm just trying to literally muster through this. As I go ahead and build up that color, I am making sure to hit every spot on the stencil. And I'm not too concerned about where the yellow is going because I'm going to be able to cover that up with some of my darker colors a little bit later. But I do want to make sure that I get down a substantial amount of ink here. Now I did have my inks in my little ink stand, which is quite handy and it's not going to allow these inks to slide on my desk. Now I'm going to come in with a little bit of that caramel, and I'm just going to go into some random spots here throughout the stencil. I'm not trying to be consistent all the way around. I just want to deepen up just a little bit of that spicy mustard color. All right, we're done with our first stencil, so I can go ahead and peel that back. But before I do, the great thing about the Hero Art stencils is that they have these little squares, and that's going to easily help me line up my stencil for a little bit later as I layer each design on top of the other. So if you guys didn't realize that the stencils have those little squares, make sure to kind of mark them out with a pencil. And this way it's really easy to line up that next stencil. All right, now we're coming in with layer number 2. I'm going to go ahead and use those marks to line up that second layer. And once I get it in place, and it's really easy to line up because it will cover up most of the like mushrooms. And that's when you kind of know that you're right where you need to be, or also just follow those little squares that you had. Okay, so for the second layer, I am going right back to that caramel, and I'm going to place that in the openings that are left. Now, the openings that are left are also going to be leaves. They're also going to be the bottoms of our mushrooms. So just keep that in mind as well. And I'm not trying to make sure that there's even coverage on all of these. Again, I'm just putting down some of this color. Some of the areas are a little bit lighter, some areas a little bit darker. Totally up to you on how much pressure and how much ink you put down, but everything is going to blend seamlessly. Now I can go ahead and remove that second stencil, and look how gorgeous this design is already. It really is speaking to fall colors. Lastly, I'm going to come in with stencil 3, or C in this case. Now I can line that up again. I'm using those little tick marks that I made with my pencil earlier to help me line everything up. Once I get everything in place, I am going to go right back to that tape and just place it down so my stencil doesn't shift. Now this is where the big pop of color comes in. I'm going to pull in that cherry ink. This is going to give me the tops of my mushrooms, but it's also going to give me some really pretty foliage as well. So again, I'm not being mindful of how much ink I'm using here. I'm just making sure that I fill in each of the little holes. Now, if you guys missed the card that I posted for the countdown, I use shades of blue for that one. I'll go ahead and link that down below. But even if you do this in a very monochromatic color palette, it's going to look perfect. Now, for last, I'm going to bring in some of that espresso ink. But before I do, I just want to clean off my stencil just so I'm not contaminating that brown ink pad. And I'm not being mindful if this gets anywhere onto the card panel itself because I can clean that off later. Now, by adding in some of this espresso, it's really going to deepen up some of that red, almost make it look like a burgundy color. But it also really makes this feel like a fall card by having those colors blended together. Now I can go ahead and remove the third stencil, and this allows me to reveal just how gorgeous this is. It's stunning once all of your colors are blended together. All right, now I'm gonna line up the fall window die. I kind of pick one of the mushrooms on the top to help me line everything up. And then once I have it lined up, I can go ahead and just grab me a little bit of tape, tape this down to my paper so it doesn't shift. And then I can go ahead and run this through my die cutting machine. Now look how gorgeous this is once it's been die cut. This is going to make a beautiful fall card. Now, now I want to go ahead and turn this into a shaker. So I am going to use a piece of the acetate that is included in the classic kit. This is going to allow me to make a really easy window opening for just a few little bits of sparkle. I just used the entire panel of the acetate sheet. I didn't even bother to trim this down because I'm going to end up trimming down the card panel a little bit later. And I am just going to put a little bit of glue right around the edge of that opening, as well as some of the more intricate pieces. Now, I do want to give you a little bit of a tip when you're putting down your acetate. One, don't use a lot of glue because it is going to stick. But also, when you lay down your acetate, make sure once you have it where it needs to be, is that you push the glue away from your opening. You see how I'm pulling that glue away from my opening? This is going to help that glue not stain the acetate. Now I can flip that over and I have a perfect landing spot to add in some decorative pieces and my sentiment a little bit later. Now, off camera, I went ahead and die cut this out several times out of colorful cardstock. They're mentioned, all the products will be mentioned in the description box below. But this allows me to have a little bit of added color to the shaker bits. And it also is going to allow me to raise up that window. All right, I went ahead and I'm just placing this on top of the stencil piece and I'm grabbing a pencil. And this is going to help me guide how to trim out the stenciled piece. So I'm just lined everything up. And again, really, really easy to make sure all of your panels lined up. Now, I did this technique in a video where I made a shaker card, a birthday shaker card, and I'll be sure to link that below. But now, since we have this colorful panel, we can go ahead and stack this up. And if you tilt the card just a little bit, you'll be able to see all of those different colors of cardstock, which I think is just a really fun look. Now, since everything is lined up and I know everything's going to be perfect, I'm going to go ahead and glue together these layers. Now, if you wanted to, you can offset one of these layers so you have more color showing. But in this case, I just wanted you to be able to tilt the card and see the color and actually not cover up any more of the window that we have here. Now, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you guys don't miss any of the content. And hello to my return followers. I love you guys. All right, now we have a great little shaker window. And again, if I tilt that just a little bit, you'll be able to see that stacked color, which I think is just a little bit of fun addition to a shaker card. Now to start working on the inside, I decided to add a pop of teal to this because look how perfect this deep teal looks with those fall colors. And I know I want to put my sentiment right there in the middle, and having just that little pop of color is going to draw your eye to that sentiment. Now I am using the coordinated sentiment here, and I'm going to use the happy fall. I placed everything into my Misty and I make sure everything's tucked in nicely in the corner. And then I can go ahead and line up that sentiment within that area. Now, if you wanted to, you could have stamped and heat embossed the image on the acetate sheet, but I wanted the sentiment to be underneath all of the shaker bits. So once I get that lined up where I need it to be, I can go ahead and close my Misty lid. Now I can go ahead and remove that top portion. I don't need that anymore because it was just sitting there for spacing. Now, I do make sure to prep my cardstock because I really don't want any of the white embossing powder to get everywhere. Now, you guys have seen me use this tip before. I use the Hero Art Unicorn White ink when I know I'm going to be heat embossing with white embossing powder. It just really makes your image pop a little bit more by using the white ink. Now, I am going to stamp this a few times because I want this to be nice and wet and have the opportunity to grab onto as much of that detail white embossing powder. Now, you don't have to do this. I just feel like sometimes on colored cardstock, I just like to make sure I have a good amount of the ink so none of the cardstock color shows through. And again, especially if I'm working on darker colors. If I'm working on a lighter color, I don't necessarily have to worry about that color peeking through. Now, once I have it stamped, and look how pretty that white already looks. It's really, really bold already. Now, you could, if you wanted to, you can use clear embossing powder with this, but I always have a tendency to gravitate to my detail white embossing powder. But anytime you're using this white ink, if you did not have the white detail ink, just make sure to use some clear embossing powder because you already have that white base down. Once I tap off the excess, I will make sure to heat this from the front and I also like to heat from the back just to make sure everything's nice and melted. Now look how gorgeous this is. Now remember, I said this was a shaker card. I did add a little bit of foam tape. Well, maybe not a little bit, a lot of foam tape. And I made sure to keep it out of the areas where my shaker bits are going to be seen. Now it's time to get things shaking. I have a ton, and when I say a ton, I mean a ton, y'all, of sequins. I've had them for years. I've added more colors, added more different iridescents to my collection. And I just grabbed what was in my drawers. I grabbed some reds, some browns, some teals, and some yellows because that was going to follow the same color palette that I used in my card. Now, since I have them lined up in the middle, I can go ahead and press down. Now, another little tip is to maybe glue a few of those in place so everything just does not shake towards the bottom of your card. All right, everything is lined up. I can go ahead and press that down. And now we have this gorgeous shaker card. Now I do have a bonus card over on my blog. If you guys want to see that card, just hop on over to the blog. And we also have a blog hop going on. So don't forget to comment for your chances to win. Now, I felt like the edges were a little bit too stark for me, so I did use what was left on my blending brush. I did not go back to any more ink and just deepen up those edges. Once that was done, I can go ahead and glue this down to a card base. Now, if you guys really love your hero kits, your classic and your premium kits, make sure to subscribe to the kits. So you'll have the opportunity to grab them before they sell out. Because remember, once they sell out, they're gone. That is it. And since this month is absolutely so gorgeous, make sure you grab these. Now, a commenter over on my blog said, could she use this for holiday cards? You betcha. Don't just think that this is just a fall thing. Make sure to use these on your holiday cards. Why not? All right, everybody, that is the card for today. Thank you so much for stopping by. I will see you guys in another video soon. And let's keep things shaking. Go ahead and make a shaker card. We would love to see what you do with it. All right, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.